Yeah. Mm. It's a beautiful day. Yeah. And it made me suddenly remember. Yeah, for sure the recording's okay. Venerable. Long time ago, when I was at Manjushri Institute up in the north of England, it was a day like this. So I was sitting there with Denzin, who's a translator. And I said, "It's a beautiful day." And he said, "Not as beautiful as my precious human life." I think he meant it. Anyway, yeah. You look out and see a beautiful day and it sort of makes your mind light up a little bit. See all the green. But that's nothing like just having this life, this human life, this precious human life. So amazing that we still have it. A lot of people lost their lives between this and the last time we met. So many people who weren't expecting it either. Were not expecting to die that day. And then it's amazing to have met with this path. So I think, when you're not, I don't know how can I put it, when you're sort of dabbling, sort of listening to the Buddhist ideas to see if they make sense and all that, that's one thing. Then it might sound like a bit of an exaggeration to say how wonderful, how amazing it is. But for somebody who has, I mean, to some degree at least, made some kind of decision. This is really, this is the real thing. This path, this is it. This is a true path. Then it's actually really useful and very important to remind yourself constantly of how amazing it is. I used to think when Kabji Rinpoche, the late Kabji Rinpoche, who passed away, I don't know, quite a few years ago now. Maybe not 10 years. His reincarnation is there. I know it could be 8 years. Could be 8 years ago. Like many traditional teachers, he would start the teaching talking about how amazing it was that we have this precious human life with all the leisure endowments, which represents a kind of situation, a kind of opportunity which is really very hard to come by for many reasons. If we think about it, we can see it's something very rare. What we have is practically impossible, and yet we have it. And then he would say, and we've also, met with the Buddha's teachings. So in a way, so I used to think to myself when I first heard this, but that's already part of the precious human rebirth. Why do you have to say that on top? I think it's because it's just a question of looking at things from different angles. So there's a precious human growth. That's one thing. Amazing. This life, this human life. But then also to have met with the Buddha's teachings is really amazing. Because if we hadn't, then what? And again, that makes more sense to you when you've already decided, oh, this is my path. So imagine, if you hadn't met with Buddha's teachings, you wouldn't have that. You wouldn't have that. This is my path going on in your mind, going on in your life. And having met also with incredibly qualified teachers, we have people like His Holiness Dalai Lama, local ones, Kishangawan Dragpa, Gyumi Rinpoche, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, who's passed away now, sadly, but I don't know. Did some of you meet with Lama Zopa Rinpoche? Did any of you meet with Lama Zopa? Yeah, some. No, he was amazing. His Holiness amazing. Kyaji Chada Rinpoche, and there are others. Really amazing people. And they're the ones that you get the teaching from, so it's pretty amazing to have met with those. And it's sort of really important to get that kind of joy in the mind. In terms of karma, it's also very important. I mean, the practical sort of benefit of having that joy in the mind is then you take joy in learning, studying, meditating, practicing. So amazing. I have this opportunity. I don't want to waste it. How amazing. And then also that kind of joy, I think, on top of the karma and the merit we're creating, it sort of life after life draws you towards that. You're drawn towards that. In other words, you've got the karma that will, and the merit and so on, that makes it possible to keep going with the same path life after life. And I mean, that's really important, isn't it? I mean, it's all well and good to have something going on this life which you find makes life make more sense, that you find satisfying and so on. But if it's just this life, then that would be a big pity. So we want to be able to keep going, right? And taking joy in it, you see, when you have that joy in the mind. It's very simple psychology, actually, that we're all aware of, it's like the association. You associate this kind of activity, like so studying, meditating and so on, with happiness. It makes your mind happy to think about. I mean, that's your own doing. But anyway, so then when you're happy to do it, then it's not such a chore. It's not like, oh, I'm going to do that again. Maybe I'll give up kind of thing. No, because you enjoy it. And it's not like just making yourself happy for no reason. You're making your mind happy, joyful, for very good reasons, for reasons that I mean, you know why it's just so amazing. Just one needs to just remind oneself. Sometimes, maybe again and again, in fact. Because also it can be hard work, and when you don't have the joy, then it's hard work, and it's just, it's like, why bother kind of thing. But when you have the joy, then you've got the energy to keep going, even when it's hard. I was thinking, because this is something I've been thinking about recently. So it's interesting. I think maybe it's more like I mean, it's great to think that you could be studying and your mind filled with joy, meditating, mind filled with joy and so on. But the main thing is like just the joy, the thought of it. So you think, yes, I'm gonna sit and meditate again. I'm gonna take a walk and meditate. I'm gonna study this. I'm gonna learn this. I'm gonna think about this. But sometimes when you are actually engaged in it, it's not so joyful. I find studying quite painful. Where the I mean, also where there's some real kind of like pleasure that comes is when you've struggled with something which isn't very nice, but still you have to, you have to do it, because then you struggle and then you break through and you get it. And then there's that sort of, oh, now I understood it. Now I saw it. Now I can see it. This really is true. This, I really can see how this works. So anyway, so that's amazing. Mm. Amazing to have met with Lama Tsongkhapa's teachings, and in particular, so we're studying is the middle-length Lam Rim, middle-length stage of the path to enlightenment. And what's really amazing is having even come across the idea of bodhicitta. I mean, that's the topic here at the moment, but also, I mean, throughout we tried to keep bodhicitta thought alive, and like what that energy is what drives us. And so what that means is achieving enlightenment in order to be able to repay the kindness of the sentient beings. Repaying the kindness because they need our help, so we're going to repay the kindness by helping. If they didn't need our help, that would be another thing altogether. But that's not the case. They need our help. There's a big job in itself, actually, is because, it's quite a nice idea that, we're doing this to repay the kindness because there's so much suffering in the world, so much suffering in samsara, the universe. And the ones who are suffering, they are mothers. They've all been our mother countless times, so kind. So we're going to achieve enlightenment because we want to repay that kindness. If we're enlightened, then we really will be able to repay that kindness, which means leading them out of suffering, leading them towards true happiness. But when you're not 100% convinced that it's possible, then that sort of like dampens the energy a bit, doesn't it? It's like, yeah, great idea, but not feeling really in one's heart that it's possible. So really, that's part of what we're doing when we're learning about the stages of path to enlightenment here, particularly bodhicitta. It's talking about how to generate bodhicitta. I'm not sure everything that we need to know about bodhicitta and the bodhisattva path is going to be here. I mean, the Lama Tsongkhapa himself obviously didn't think that this book was enough. He wrote a lot of other books with all sorts of important explanations about how enlightenment is possible, how it is possible to make that kind of change, why it's necessary, and so on. Anyway, so that's why we are spending this time together this morning, this afternoon. To help us progress along the path to enlightenment in order to be able to repay the kindness of the sentient beings. So if we can please have the refuge of Bodhicitta prayer. Sangye Chöda Zoye Chonamla Chancho Patu Tani Gyatsuchi Dagi Jinso Ye Besona Ye Dola Penje Zang Trubara. I take refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my merits of generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my merits of generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. So, do you have the foundation of all good qualities? You can have that. Have to scroll up a bit. That's it. Can everybody see? Anyway, I can just about see. Quite really bad. The foundation of all good qualities is the kind and perfect Guru. Correctly following the Guru is the root of the path. By my clearly seeing this and applying great effort, please bless me to rely upon the Guru with great respect. When I've discovered that the precious freedom of this rebirth is found only once, is extremely difficult to find again, and is greatly meaningful, please bless me to unceasingly generate the mind, taking its essence day and night. This body and life are changing like a water bubble. Remember how quickly they perish and death comes. After death, just like a shadow follows the body, the results of black and white karma follow. When I have found definite conviction in this, please bless me always to be conscientious in abandoning even the slightest collection of shortcomings and in accomplishing all virtuous deeds. When I have recognized the shortcomings of samsaric perfections, there is no satisfaction in enjoying them. They are the door to suffering and they cannot be trusted. Please bless me to generate a strong wish for the bliss of liberation. Through my being led by this pure thought, with great remembrance, alertness, and conscientiousness, please bless me to make keeping the individual liberation vows the root of the teachings, my essential practice. Just as I have fallen into the sea of samsara, so have all mother transmigratory beings. By my seeing this, please bless me to train in supreme bodhicitta, which bears the responsibility of freeing transmigratory beings. Even if I develop only bodhicitta without familiarizing myself with the three types of morality, I cannot achieve enlightenment. By my seeing this well, please bless me to keep the vow of the sons of the victorious ones with fervent effort. By my having pacified distractions to wrong objects and correctly analyzing the meaning of reality, please bless me to quickly generate within my mind stream the unified path of calm abiding and special insight. When I have become a suitable vessel by training in the common path, please bless me to immediately enter the holy gateway of the fortunate beings, the supreme of all vehicles, the Vajrayana. At that time, the basis of accomplishing the two attainments is keeping my vows and samaya purely. When I have gained effortless conviction in this, please bless me to protect them even at the cost of my life. Then, when I have realized exactly the vital points of the two stages, the essence of the tantric sets, and am enjoying the yoga of 4 sessions with effort, without being distracted by non-meditation objects, please bless me to accomplish these according to the teachings of the holy beings. Thus may the virtuous friends who reveal the noble path and the spiritual practitioners who correctly accomplish it have long lives. Please bless me to pacify completely the collections of outer and inner obstacles. In all my lives, never separated from perfect gurus, may I enjoy the magnificent Dharma, and by completing the qualities of the grounds and paths, may I quickly attain the state of Vajradhara. Thank you. Yes. 66%, something like that. Should do. So now we're on page 209. That's sort of more or less had a look at the way to generate bodhicitta by the 6 causes of one effect, as some called them, the 7-fold cause and effect instruction. Now it says chapter 16. So that's the way the translators organized the book into chapters. So chapter 16, equalizing, exchanging oneself and others, and that's actually what this is about. Whether you got the text or not, anyway, that's where we are. Does everybody have it? Some of you do. Okay. It's handy if you do, but should not be insurmountable if you don't. You just have to listen well. Thumbs up. Okay, so then, so it says, so this is the second point. I can't remember what the first one was, probably the 7-fold cause and effect instruction. Anyway, number 2. So this is about how to generate bodhicitta. Just as a, what was that? I guess that was from some time ago. You just asked me a question, Isabella.
Yeah, I was asking if you'd like me to screen share for the text that you're reading off.
Oh, well, I don't think so. We don't usually, and it could be helpful, but then also it sort of cuts everybody off from each other, because then all you can see is the text on the screen and you hear a voice, a disembodied voice. So
Okay, sounds good.
we'll leave it like that then.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks anyway then.
Great.
Yeah. Right. So anyway, we now have, so I mean, in general, there are these 2 ways to meditate on bodhicitta. There's a 7-part cause and effect instruction. So that means, like meditating on sentient beings as one's mother, thinking of the kindness and so on, right? Preparing the kindness. And then the other one is equalizing, exchanging self and others. And it's quite interesting that actually they usually say that for the, what's the expression they use? For practitioners with a sharp intellect, then the way to meditate on bodhicitta is this way. And then, for duller intellect, it's the other way, 7-fold cause and effect instruction. That's quite interesting, actually, because maybe we'll come back to this when we get to the end of this explanation, because in a way it looks like maybe this is the easy way. The other way is more difficult. Anyway, I'm putting the cart before the horse. We should look at this and then think about, which one is actually the more difficult one. Anyway, so the training based on text by Shantideva. This is mainly the Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, the Bodhisattva Charavatara, or the Bodhicharyavatara. Mainly that. So there's another one by him which he himself said complements the Bodhicharyavatara, which is called the Compendium of Trainings. So the Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life and the Compendium of Trainings. So they usually say that where, what's not explained so clearly in the one is more clearly explained in the other, and vice versa. Okay, so you have, first of all, contemplating the benefits of exchanging self and others and the fault of not exchanging self and others. Okay, so this is meditating on bodhicitta by way of equalizing and exchanging self and others, or as he says, oneself and others. Equalizing, exchanging self and others. So first of all, thinking about the benefits of exchanging and the faults of not exchanging. So that's the first point. Then the second point, demonstrating that you can generate this mind if you familiarize yourself with it. In other words, like it looks like exchanging self and others. Now, what that means is exchanging self and others. It's not like, okay, so you're sitting over there and I'm sitting over here. So let's change places, I'll sit over there and you can sit over here. And it doesn't even mean, from now on, I have to think I'm you and you have to think you're me kind of thing. Or I become you and you become me. What it is to do with is noticing how up until now and including now, we have this very strong tendency to, is a kind of selfish tendency to kind of like put ourselves first. And some people, especially the first time you hear it, then immediately you're like, what do you mean I'm selfish? I'm not selfish. I'm quite generous. I'm quite patient. I'm quite kind. But anyway, when we look deeply, then we begin to find that it's a very strong, very deep-rooted tendency to put oneself first, and then others, maybe by the way, we might help them, but they're not the main thing. Ourselves is the main thing. I mean, maybe if you look deep inside yourself, you'll find it's not like that. But anyway, that's what, according to this teaching, from my understanding, that's what it's saying. And so the exchange of self and others means putting others first, and then, one's taking care of oneself by the way. And in fact, what you discover that in general with bodhicitta, and especially with this way of thinking, that by putting oneself first and others second, you don't get the happiness that you want, and there's just nothing but the suffering that you don't like. And you do nothing but harm others. There's a tendency like that. Then when you switch that, then by putting others first, then all your own needs are taken care of by the way. That's the beauty of it, actually. So then, when you look at that, then sometimes you think, so how could I possibly do that? So that second point is showing that, if you familiarize yourself with it, if you get into the habit, in other words, if you keep trying, you'll succeed. If you keep trying, you will be able to do that. That's what he's saying. And then the third point, the stages of meditation on how to exchange oneself and others. So the actual meditation, in other words. So the first one, contemplating the benefits of exchanging, the faults of not exchanging oneself and others. So what kind of thing goes wrong when you don't exchange self and others? So mostly this is quoted from the Bodhicharavatar, entering the Bodhisattva way. It's translated in different ways. So he's calling it entering the Bodhisattva way. And the reason for that is because it's Jangsusemi Jubba Jukpa. Jukpa usually means like to enter. So it's kind of like literally okay. It's Bodhisattva practice, Bodhisattva way, Bodhisattva conduct, entering, engaging, there are different ways. But my favorite is what Steve Batchelor calls it. So his translation of this text, which has been around since like forever. So anyway, the Bodhisattva's way of life. The Bodhisattva's way of life. So anyway, the Bodhisattva's way of life says, so this is chapter 8, verse 120. whoever wishes to protect himself and others, oneself and others, rapidly, quickly, should practice the secret instructions that the secret instructions in exchanging oneself and others. So there's this word consisted. I should maybe keep my mouth shut, but anyway, I don't find that putting that word consist clarifies things. It just like makes things like unclear. It's the secret instruction in exchanging oneself and others. So yeah, so anyway, to protect, I mean, there's all sorts of things that you might want to protect oneself and yourself and others from. If you think about it, what do you think it would mean? Life's problems, the suffering of the lower realms, suffering of psychic existence in general. So how Gyaltsabje, so Lama Tsongkhapa's two main disciples, Gyaltsabje or Gyaltsab Dhamma Rinchen and Kedubje, both really quite amazing. So yeah, anyway, so he has a commentary to the Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, and so what he says is to protect from what? Protect from the difficulties of existence, meaning cyclic existence, and peace. And you come across this quite often in the Mahayana teachings. Generally speaking, when we talk about the truth of suffering, the suffering of, we talk about the suffering of, and like going for refuge, you need to think about the suffering of the lower realms and of cyclic existence in general. So cyclic existence in general, and specifically of the lower realms. But in the Mahayana, there's a suffering. There's two things which the Bodhisattva considers to be like really horrifying. One is the suffering of samsara. Samsara means being under the control of the karma and the mental afflictions, right? So you what you want to do is to serve sentient beings, help sentient beings, but your karma and your mental afflictions stop you. So that's the problem with being in cyclic existence. That's why bodhisattvas hate the idea of being in cyclic existence. What it means is they hate to be under the control of karma and mental afflictions. They want to be in the world with people, but of their own free will, to have the freedom to do whatever they want and not to be controlled by their karma and mental afflictions. That's why they don't like psychic existence. It's not like they want to go away from this world and leave us behind. It's that they don't want to be controlled by karma and the mental afflictions. And the other thing that they find really detestable, like really scary, super scary, is the idea of going beyond psychic existence and achieving their own personal liberation, because then you spend apparently like millions of years and maybe even billions of years just in this kind of like very quiet state, pretty blissful, because now you have your own free will. You're not controlled by the mental afflictions and karma anymore. And then what are you going to do to help others when you're in that meditation? Nothing, right? So they find that horrifying. So that's why Gyaltsab says, when it says whoever wishes to protect oneself and others quickly, that means protect oneself and others from those two extremes, cyclic existence and one's own solitary peace. Then they should exchange self and others, and it'll explain also below, why that is, why that's necessary. If you want to protect yourself and others, why do you need to exchange self and others, which is the secret instruction. And it's called secret mainly because there are I mean, we don't feel like we're kind of anything special, but apparently there are people that if they were taught this, it would kind of like really blow their minds. So it's not, they're not suitable to be taught it. That's what he says. Secret from those who are not really suitable to hear that teaching. There's also quite interesting thing about why. Why would somebody? What would be wrong with telling anybody about this? One thing is they might just think, well, that's just stupid. He's changing self and others. So that's not very good, is it, for them to hear this kind of amazing teaching and just think that's stupid? Imagine the karma, you know. So to protect them, then it should be kept secret. But I don't know how you would know that you should keep this teaching secret from some people. I guess I do know actually. I think probably most of what I don't know, maybe most anyway. A lot of what I've learned in Buddhism, I think I wouldn't want to tell most people I know unless they were actually interested in following the Buddhist teachings and so on. Most things they probably just say. I mean, even talking about past and future lives. Come on, you got no proof of that. How can you prove it? But I can't prove it. I just got a feeling. Anyway, okay, yeah. He also says it's a secret because it's like the essence of the Mahayana path. But no, I don't know about that. But anyway, you can see that um, you have to have a particular kind of disposition of mind to be receptive to this teaching. Otherwise, you might just reject it, and that would be really quite bad. So then he goes on to say, actually, 120, yeah, a few verses later, and this is really, like Lama Tsongkhapa doesn't really expound on it much. It's just like this is what Shantideva says, the great Bodhisattva Shantideva says. Just think about it, just think about it. All happiness that exists in the world arises from wanting happiness for others. All suffering that exists in the world arises from wanting one's own happiness. And of course, when it says in the world like that, I mean, I'm not criticizing the translation, but you see that, and it's like you find yourself looking around the world to see how, to see how the happiness in the world comes from wanting happiness for others. But mainly this, it's like you have to turn this on your own mind, right? Focus on your own mind. All the happiness in your world that you experience in your world comes from wanting the happiness for others. All suffering that exists in the world, in your world, all your suffering arises from wanting one's own happiness. To make it simple, you could say arises from being selfish, putting yourself first. And there's more explanation, I think, in Pabongka Rinpoche's Liberation. I seem to remember he goes more into it, but it might be in this text further down. I can't remember, but you've just got to think about the 10 non-virtues. If you have no selfishness, would you do any of those 10 non-virtues? Killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying, destructive speech, harsh speech, idle gossip, or senseless talk. Then what you call it, covetousness, ill will, wrong view. Wrong views may be a bit sticky, but yeah, those 10 non-virtues, aren't they all to do with harming others? And so if you care for others more than yourself, I mean, even if you just think of all sentient beings as one's mother, then why would you want to hurt them? Why would you want to hurt others just for your own gratification? So that kind of thing. And then, so that's just like what you call it, the small person of small capability, that kind of area in the stage of the path. If you think about it anyway, you can see that if you think about what's going to happen in the next life, things going badly, things going wrong, it all comes back to whether you're coming from selfishness or coming from, and what's the opposite of selfishness? Altruism or something from that. And likewise, liberation, what is it? Why are we still here? If you think about it, why are we still here? It's going to come down to selfishness and not having the, like that altruism. And likewise, enlightenment. I mean, they say it's something that's often quoted here. Where is that? I mean, certainly in the Lama Chöpa it says that, Buddha Shakyamuni, the one who started all this, as they say, for countless eons, practicing the path, practicing, based on compassion. So that amazing person was exactly the same as ourselves once. Exactly the same. Kind of like just hanging out with us, going down the bar, watching TV or whatever it was they used to do, we were doing in those days, however many eons ago, same as us, doing the same thing, kind of thing, just thinking me, me, me. And then something happened. I don't know how it happened, but something happened. So he decided to put others first. And that's where it got him. By putting others first, not being selfish, basing his life on that, then going life after life after life, that taking him towards Bodhichitta, then with the Bodhichitta following the Bodhisattva's path, going up through the the grounds, the different levels to enlightenment. That's where it started. That's why there is such a big difference between him and us, is that at that certain point he decided to switch being selfish for being more considerate for others, putting others first. So that's the big difference. Oh, and in fact, that comes here, yeah. That comes just below. So anyway, yeah. So then, what need is there to say any more? The childish work for their own welfare. The sages for the welfare of others. Look at the difference between the two. Yeah. So it's basically what I was just saying, really. Then, so then here is something that His Holiness is always quoting this verse. And it's really quite amazing. If one fails to correctly exchange, to perfectly exchange one's own happiness with others' suffering, if one does not switch, if one doesn't exchange self and others, if one doesn't switch, so this is how it's put here, exchange one's own happiness with others' suffering, one will not reach Buddhahood. So without exchanging self and others' enlightenment, forget it. And then how, I think again, this is from Gyaltsab Je. No, Lama Tsongkhapa, actually. Isn't it? Anyways, either Lama Tsongkhapa or Gyaltsab Je. Yeah, Gyaltsab Je is saying. So then you might think to yourself, well, okay, I won't achieve enlightenment, but that's okay. I'll just, carry on in samsara. And so Gyaltsab Je says, what this is explaining to us, is that without exchanging self and others, it's not just that you won't achieve enlightenment. Not achieving enlightenment, you'll remain in psychic existence and you'll have no happiness at all. There's no way of finding happiness in psychic existence except by exchanging self and others. Which I guess what that means is, so we've got things going pretty well for us. We've got just, a lot of we all have, suffering in our lives, problems in our lives. It's just part of human life, isn't it? We've got the precious human rebirth, which doesn't mean to say that everything's perfect, right? The precious human rebirth. People sometimes call it the perfect human rebirth. Well, it's perfect in a way, like relatively perfect. But anyway, so the point is that we have so much going for us, and we have to think about, where did that come from? I mean, just if you had to guess, does it come from being selfish, or does it come from being considerate and kind? I doubt that it comes from being selfish. So then what's the opposite of being selfish? So that's where it comes from. Anything good that's going on in our lives at the moment comes from putting others first, being considerate, being kind, thinking of others. Okay, so if one fails to perfectly exchange one's own happiness and other suffering, one will not reach Buddhahood or even be happy in psychic existence. Not only will you not reach enlightenment, you won't find any happiness while you remain in psychic existence. Just as it is expressed here, think of cherishing yourself as though to all degenerations, so all kind of like difficulties, problems, and cherishing others as the source. He says basis, ne is more like source. Cherishing others is the source of all excellence. So we can stop for a few minutes, think about that. Oh, don't you wonder about this? Okay, fair enough. If you can't exchange self and others, you won't be able to achieve enlightenment. Kind of get that. But you'll achieve no happiness in psychic existence either. And then actually, all happiness in the world comes from wanting happiness for others. All suffering that exists in the world arises from wanting one's own happiness. What need is there to say any more? The childish work for their own welfare. The sages for the welfare of others. Look at the difference between the two. So anyway, yeah. So does that mean that? So we have some happiness in this life, don't we? So did that come because maybe last life we exchanged self and others? What about the the here and solitary riser arhats? Did they get to be arhats by exchanging self and others? It's a bit funny, isn't it? And especially, think about it. I mean, probably somewhere in this text, Lama Tsongkhapa says, but anyway, even if it doesn't, generally speaking, just like, with the previous way of meditating on Bodhichitta, you got those 7 steps. So with the exchanging self and others, they took about 5 steps. First of all, equalizing self and others. And when it comes to the actual way to meditate on exchanging self and others, it probably starts off with, I can't remember. I didn't read ahead and I've forgotten. I've read before, but I've forgotten. Forget everything. Equalizing self and others. Then thinking about the faults, many faults of cherishing oneself. Then, third one, thinking about the many benefits that come from cherishing others. Then the fourth one, exchanging self and others. The fifth one, taking and giving. Dongmen. So, does that mean that any happiness that we experience now comes because we did the equalizing self and others, the thinking about the faults of self-cherishing, the benefits of cherishing others, and then exchange self and others? Is that what it means? This is not just Mahayana. This is like really Mahayana, right? Equalizing, exchange self and others. So like everybody has done the Mahayana up to this point before in previous lives to come to this. Yeah, I guess not. So I think maybe just sort of like a simple answer, simple solution, if you like, would be, I think maybe like I just said really to a few minutes ago. You don't get anywhere by being selfish in terms of karma, in terms of progress along the spiritual path. You see, they talk about the heroes and solitary risers, those Hinayana practitioners, the ones who are, following the path to their own liberation, and those who have achieved their own liberation, the arhats, that they still have the self-cherishing mind. They say that, but do you think they're selfish? Like, me kind of selfish. Like, get out of the way, I want to be first kind of selfish. Do you think they have that? I mean, in fact, we know that it's very clear in the teachings that they practice the 4 immeasurables. So they have very, very deep experience of compassion. They don't take responsibility, like in the Mahayana, for freeing all sentient beings from their suffering, but they still have great compassion. And so that kind of like this kind of selfishness that we're talking about here is like you'd have to say it's a very what do you call it? Very much a mental affliction. I don't know which one it would be, but I mean it seems very obvious. It's like very strong sense of me, and then me being the most important one. You couldn't get anywhere with that, could you? How would you create the causes of happiness based on that when that's going on in your mind? How could you? In terms of like a good future life, in terms of liberation from samsara. So I think that's what it's saying. I think that's one way of understanding. If one fails to correctly exchange oneself, one's own happiness with the other's suffering. In other words, if one doesn't stop being selfish, and if one doesn't start really putting others first, no way of achieving enlightenment and no way of achieving any happiness in psychic existence. I think it's like that. Just as it is expressed here, think of cherishing yourself as the door to all degeneration, all problems, suffering, and cherishing others as the source of all excellence. Then Lao Tsongkhapa starts talking about why it might look impossible, but it's not impossible to exchange self and others. So the second of 3 points, just demonstrating that you can generate this mind if you familiarize yourself with it enough. So this first paragraph here, so fear used to arise in you even at hearing your enemy's name, but later on you reconciled and became friends and were sad if he or she were absent. Likewise, from the mind following habits, that's a bit of a clunky expression. So it's through getting into the habit of thinking in that way, you can see yourself as like someone else and others as like yourself. So what this is saying is we might even have experienced this, somebody who you really, well, okay, so enemy, right? So if it's the same as in the equanimity meditation, so somebody harms you. But this is also talking about somebody who's harms you, and just the very thought of them fills you with fear. Then something happens. I don't know, maybe you have what do you call it, peace talk or something. And anyway, you resolve your difficulties and you become very close. Yeah. I think I had something like that at school, actually. Not exactly like a terrible enemy that I was terrified of, but I can remember getting into a bit of a tussle with this guy in the year above me, and then we became best friends, like almost straight away. It's quite funny. But anyway, yeah. So, but this can happen, definitely, You can imagine it, can't you? Somebody you really hate, then something happens and you just become so close that when they're not there, then you really miss them. You really don't like it when they go away. You like spending time with them. So it's just a question of well, what's he saying here? You reconcile and become friends, and we're very sad if you're absent. So this goes to because you can imagine that when you're in the first stage of the fear of even hearing the person's name, you can't imagine that things could change. And yet just by talking with the person, your way of thinking changed, and it didn't stay fixed. So likewise, you can learn to see yourself as someone else and others as like yourself as like someone else and others as like yourself. We have to also think about what that means, because Lama Tsongkhapa explains below, he doesn't mean that you're supposed to think, I'm you and you're me kind of thing. It's the switching of the selfishness and the cherishing mind, the caring mind. And yet, actually, in the eighth chapter of the Bodhichitta, which is known, it's called the concentration chapter, although it does talk a bit about developing concentration, but actually it's mostly about exchanging self and others. And he talks a lot about, in that chapter, he talks a lot about, like sort of perceiving the other as oneself and oneself as the other. There are lots of very kind of like interesting meditations that come up there. And yet that could, maybe that's just like a way of training one's mind. I know it's something to think about anyway. So what is the point here? So the point is that things can change and we have the experience maybe of things changing in a way we would never have imagined that they could change. Enemy changed to friend, friend changed to enemy, kind of thing. And for sure, the other way around, for sure. Gosh, some terrible things happen, don't they? People are supposedly friends and then they turn against each other. So he's saying, well, because of that, it's not so it's not so impossible that we to be able to exchange self and others. But then he's got there's this another verse from the Bodhichitta. Do not avoid things because they're difficult. So don't give up just because it's hard to do, because you're finding it difficult. By the strength of familiarization, you become sad at the absence of someone whose name was once frightful to hear. So it's like you've got Lama Tsongkhapa's explanation, and then he's saying, and this is actually what Shantideva says also. Then this interesting two lines, also from the Bodhichitta. It is not all that hard to posit my body as belonging to others. So one might think, this is kind of like just coming out of nowhere, really. I don't know. One might think, since someone else's body is not my own body, how could it be appropriate to generate the same attitude of mind toward it? So, yeah, I mean, that's where Lama Tsongkhapa seems to be going, isn't it? That, we're talking about kind of familiarizing oneself, or let's say trying to think. When you see the body of others, you're thinking my body. And when your mind focuses on your body and you're thinking the other's body. Well, I mean, he only just mentions mine. So that's interesting because, like your body is my body, but he's talking about here about thinking my body. So actually, it maybe makes sense more, something that comes up further down. So this mountain and that mountain, right? So when you're on this mountain, when you're over here on this mountain, then quite naturally you have the thought arising, this mountain, where the mountain you're on, of course you're going to think this mountain, right? And then the mountain over there, you're going to be thinking that mountain, right? That's quite natural, isn't it? And yet it's quite interesting because if you go down the hill, down the mountain, and go up the other mountain, then that mountain that you were thinking that mountain, now you start thinking this mountain. And the one that you were on, that you were thinking this mountain, now you're thinking that mountain. So it's possible to change, isn't it? And it's maybe another, it's maybe a step further to to, realize that that is how things are, that, thinking this mountain is just relative to where I am. Whereas if I were to go over there, then I'd be saying this mountain about that mountain and that mountain about this mountain. Now, to be standing on this mountain and thinking of it as that mountain. And looking over there and thinking this mountain about the mountain over there. Sort of mental gymnastics. But you get the point. So I used to think to myself, that which is maybe a similar thing. So, of course, this isn't all about this mountain and that mountain. I mean, that's not the main point, right? It's just to give you an idea. So what's quite interesting is that I'm the only one that thinks I about me. In fact, I'm the only one in the whole universe. Everybody else in the whole universe, I mean, of course, most people are not aware, but anyway, if they were aware. Well, okay, so anyway, you get the idea. Everybody else is thinking he or that person. So it looks like I'm outvoted. Everybody else is saying he. So I'm the only one that's saying I. So who's right and who's wrong? I mean, of course, it's the same thing as this mountain and that mountain thing. It's just relative, but yeah, it's true though, isn't it? I'm the only one. So just like this mountain and that mountain, looking at yourself and thinking he, looking at yourself from the perspective of others, thinking he, or she, depending. Or I don't know, anyway, depending on your pronouns. Maybe this person and that person. They. So this is something we can do as we, like walking around, going shopping, whatever. I mean, of course, when you go shopping, then you have to focus on the products and so on, but we can do this. And we can do this, and we also have to ask ourselves, so why? What's the point? But anyway, okay, so it is not going back to those 2 lines, it is not that hard to posit my body as belonging to others. One might think, since someone else's body is not my own body, how can it be appropriate to generate the same attitude of mind toward it? And then he has this, I don't know if you've read ahead, it's quite interesting actually. So this body was also created from the semen and blood, I think a sperm and egg really. Anyway, maybe that's how they used to. The Tibetan word is like liquid. Use the word liquid. Anyway, sperm and egg of our parents. So this body was also created from the sperm and egg of our parents, right? So it came from somewhere else. There was a time when that egg and that sperm was nothing to do with us, right? Then, the parents got together and that sperm and egg met, and so the egg became fertilized. And at a certain point, whether it was like immediately that the egg became fertilized, or anyway, at a certain point, the consciousness entered into that, that first fertilized egg. And that fertilized egg became one's body. So, presumably we didn't really have any, I mean, we would probably have still had some kind of form of, thought I kind of thing. But we wouldn't have been particularly aware of the body at that point, but gradually that thing which started off being absolutely nothing to do with us, we began to have a very strong sense of I and mine about, right? Isn't that right? So that means actually this body that we have at the moment, because where did it come from? That fertilized egg, right? How weird is that? So this body came from that sperm and egg, which was originally nothing to do with us until our mind entered into it. And then over a period of time, we got into the habit of thinking mine. This is mine. And having a strong sense of I in relation to it, right? So, something which we were not in the habit of thinking I about, we gradually got into the habit of thinking I about, I and mine about. Even though it was, so even though it was created from parts of others' bodies, so, that sperm and egg, they were from our parents, somebody else, we hold it to be I by the power of previous familiarization. Likewise, this mind will arise if we familiarize ourselves with cherishing others' bodies as if they were our own. So now it's switched a little bit, right? And maybe this is what he really meant, that not so much, although it does seem to be saying, at like the beginning of that paragraph, what it seems to be saying is, you're actually thinking my body about the bodies of others. Here, maybe he's being more clear about what he really means. Likewise, this mind will arise if we familiarize ourselves with cherishing others' bodies as if they were our own. So the point is, the body of somebody else is not my body, so how can I cherish it? But actually, through familiarization, you can cherish the bodies of others, in other words, care for their bodies and what happens to their bodies, and keeping their bodies healthy and comfortable, clothed, housed, kind of thing. Like at the moment, we are so concerned with how with this body, keeping it healthy, nourished, and so on. It's just a question of getting into the habit. It's just a question of developing the habit. And then, a verse about that from the Bodhichitta again. Though you apprehend drops of someone else's blood and semen, for sperm and egg as yourself, like that, get used to it regarding others. So there's something to sort of like think about and discover, isn't it? I think explore. Kind of thinking, because it's just like this mountain and that mountain. So, that body, which seems so much the body of another versus my body, it's not so much like it's relative. From over here, it's mine. But from over there, their body is mine. And this body is somebody else's body. So then the cherishing comes to make more sense. Maybe it breaks through something somehow there. Okay. So we'll stop for a couple of minutes to think about that. Let's see. So we're not going to get through all the next bit. So now, anyway, page 211. So then Lama Tsongkhapa starts talking about the actual stages of meditation, the sequence of meditations on how to exchange oneself and others. So first of all, removing obstacles, and then the actual way to meditate. So he says, what we call, exchanging oneself and others. And this is a phrase I've never come across before, actually, apart from here. Making oneself into the other and making others into oneself. I don't know where that comes from. So anyway, it does not mean training in the mind that thinks the other person is me and therefore his, her eyes and so forth are my eyes and so on and so forth. So he's saying categorically, it really doesn't mean thinking that I'm you and you're me, right? He's saying very clearly here. So doesn't mean that. So what does it mean? Rather, it is to exchange the perspective of the minds that cherish oneself and the mind that neglects others, to generate the mind that cherishes others like we cherish ourselves and neglect ourselves like we neglect others. So anyway, talking about the position, the perspective of the positions, anyway, so it's to do with this. The switch is up until now, thinking me, and then others, not so concerned about. Anyway, I mean, I think that's what Lama Tsongkhapa is saying, but also it's just something to think about, right? You don't just accept things, right? You have to really think and then see how it looks. Accept it if it really makes sense. If it doesn't make sense, then you don't have to accept, right? Rather, it is to exchange the positions of them. Okay, so anyway, what he's saying is it's switching that instead of the selfishness, the obsession with oneself, and they often say neglecting others. So not really caring. They're not the main thing. Others aren't the main thing. Main thing is me. Switching that. They're the main thing. And me, that's not so important. And this is one thing that's a little bit difficult because because what often they use the expression neglect, so up until now we have cherished ourselves and neglected others, so now we're meant to cherish others and neglect ourselves, and that doesn't sit very well, does it? And does it not sit well just because it's our own ego that's objecting, or is it actually wrong? Is it actually wrong to neglect oneself? I mean, when you consider and when you understand that by putting others first, then everything that you've ever wanted and even more is going to happen by the way, does sort of sweeten the pill kind of thing. But to neglect oneself, it seems like it's not quite right, doesn't it? What's that supposed to? Because I mean, first of all, think about what neglecting oneself usually means to us. Neglecting ourselves means not being at all careful with our diet, so we get kind of overweight, unhealthy, maybe not enough exercise, so neglecting oneself in that way, right? Eating the wrong food, not taking exercise. That would be neglecting ourselves, wouldn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Not dressing carefully, healthily, warm clothes when it's cold weather and so on. So does it mean that? It's worth thinking about, whether that could be actually what they mean. But I don't think it is. I don't see, for example, I don't see our teachers doing that. Although maybe Lama Zorinpoche did. I think maybe he did. And he was a real bodhisattva for sure. They say that he had an operation to remove a gallbladder, which should have been a very quick operation, but apparently it took hours because they couldn't find it. Because his inside was all kind of like messed up after so many years of, like not sleeping and maybe not being careful enough with diet and so on. Yeah. But I don't know. I think the main thing really, you can talk about neglecting, but anyway, the main thing is putting others first, not putting yourself first. I think that about covers it. I think that covers what it means to exchange self and others. Don't put yourself first, put others first. If you want to call not putting yourself first neglecting yourself, okay, go ahead and call it that. But the main thing is putting others first. Putting others first, which is, also not easy, right? Goodness, putting others first. I mean, it's pretty special and pretty amazing to even think that it would be a great thing to do. To actually do it is, is almost like, it's almost like a luxury, by which I mean, when everything's going well, putting others first, it can be quite easy. But when push comes to shove, as they say, and when, there's just one loaf of bread left on the shelf, then putting others first, stepping back and letting somebody else take it, not so easy. So, even that is not easy, but I think that that's what it means. I think that's the main point. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so to generate the mind that cherishes others like we cherish ourselves. So, and that also needs to be explained, so like, just like we cherish ourselves now, from now on, cherishing others like that, not having the cherishing towards ourselves, but having the cherishing towards others. It doesn't mean to leave the self-cherishing intact and then on top of that to cherish others. I don't think it means that. Because they when they're explaining this, they always say, up until now, we've cherished ourselves and then neglected others. To exchange, if we're going to exchange self and others, what that means is from now on, we're going to cherish others and neglect ourselves. No, I never heard anybody saying, you can keep on cherishing, keep going with the self-cherishing, but also cherish others. I never heard anybody say that. But I guess it's something to think about. And therefore, it was taught that one's own happiness and the suffering of others should be exchanged. When we perceive self-cherishing as our enemy, we stop making our own happiness our priority. There you are, you see. When we perceive cherishing others as an excellent quality, stop neglecting the suffering of others, we make it our priority to eliminate the suffering of others. In short, we will act for the sake of eliminating the suffering of others without concern for our own happiness. So in a way, what this is saying is, just look at the way well, I mean, okay, so do we know any bodhisattvas? Well, from what we understand about bodhisattvas, and I mean, especially, you study something like the Lama Tsongkhapa's elucidating the intent of the Konvarap self. So he goes through he goes through the different bodhisattva levels. So on the first level, there's like a special ability to practice generosity, and then on the second, morality, and then on the third, patience, and so on. So when you read about how they practice, you really get an idea. Wow, this is, that's what it's like to be a bodhisattva. You can hear about that. And sometimes you meet people and you think, oh, this person definitely is a bodhisattva. Somebody like His Holiness, somebody like some of our teachers. There are others. So what I'm trying to say is, this is what they do. Why they are like they are is because they do this. They put others first. So because of many lifetimes of putting others first, that's how they became like that. If I'm practicing this, if I practice this way, I mean, being perfect right from the beginning is, you forget about it. But, when I'm practicing this, I'm practicing what they do. I'll become like them. By doing this, I'll become like them. That's pretty amazing, isn't it? So I think maybe we can stop there. Right. And so please read ahead a bit. It helps make more sense, as we're reading through it together in the class. And so again, no class next week. Yeah. So instead we have this retreat, 4-day retreat, and then so in 2 weeks we have another class. Then the next week, and then I think the next week. So starting from the week after next, we've got 3 classes in succession, and then that will be it. I think that's it for the year. Pretty sure. I'm not sure. Actually, I can't remember, but that might be it for the year. Okay, so can we have some dedication prayers, maybe? If it's not complicated, if it is, then we can just. Looks like you found something. Well, that's good. That's also good. Yeah, if you just sort of scroll down to where it starts saying dedication, we can do some of that. Oh, well done. Yeah, that's it. If you can increase the size a bit, please. That's good. Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you. So because of all of the merit we created during this class, during this time together, this day, as well as all of the the merits oneself and others from the past, present, like now, and in the future. May the precious supreme Bodhichitta not yet born arise. May that arisen not decline, but increase more and more. Due to the past, present, and future merits collected by me, and all the merits of the 3 times collected by numberless Buddhas and numberless sentient beings, may Bodhicitta be generated in the hearts of all the sentient beings of the 6 realms, and especially in the hearts of everybody in this world, including all the students, benefactors, and volunteers in the FPMT organization. May it be generated in the hearts of all those who rely upon me, all those for whom I have promised to pray, and all those whose names have been given to me. May it be generated in my heart and in the hearts of all my family members, those who are living and those who have died. May the bodhicitta that has already been generated increase. If you scroll down a bit, we'll do his holiness long life. And then maybe we can probably leave it there. Incomparably kind and supreme Tenzin Gyatso, the wish-granting, wish-fulfilling jewel, source of every single benefit and happiness in this world, may you have a long life and all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. Savior of the land of snow's teachings and transmigratory beings, who extensively clarifies the path that unifies emptiness and compassion, may all your holy wishes, to the lotus holder Tenzin Gyatso, I beseech, may all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. So if we dedicate also for the long lives of all of our holy gurus, particularly the ones that are connected with Land of Medicine Buddha I mentioned. So we already dedicated for his holiness long life, and also Gimi Kenzo Rinpoche, Kishinon Drapa, Nchara Rinpoche, Yangtze Rinpoche, and others, Kandala. I'm sure I've missed some out, but anyway, all of them. And for their holy wishes to succeed. The success of the FMT in general, and especially of Land of Medicine Buddha, for the success of all of us in our path, for our family members and friends. It's really important when you're dedicating to think the merit that we're dedicating doesn't exist as it appears, doesn't exist from its own side in the way that it appears. Is empty of existing from its own side independently as it appears. Likewise, we ourselves, the ones who are dedicating, and the dedication itself, what we dedicated it all to as well. Okay, so thank you very much. That was very good. Talking about Bodhichitta. What else? What else is there to do? Okay, so see you in a couple of weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. Stay alive. Stay.
Thank you.
Bye. Okay.